Welcome to our St. George All Candidates meeting. I'd like to thank the organizers of the meeting for inviting me here to be your moderator. My name is Roy Amaron. I understand there were two candidates. One of the candidates had 4 signs for his particular choice of candidate on the front of his house. I only had 2, so I got the call. Thank you. He laughed. We appreciate the candidates coming tonight. We're missing one. Hopefully she will be here later. We have they have chosen the order of their speaking by lot, and I'll give you the order in a moment. It's appropriate that we should have this meeting in the Memorial Hall. It certainly is what this hall is meant for, and it's a great use for a great site. Each of the candidates will make an opening statement, and it will last for no more than 3 minutes. And my friend Steve Jones up here will help make sure that that happens. Each of the candidates, when all have spoken, will be asked to respond to a particular question, which I will read when that time comes. And they will have no more than 2 minutes to answer that set question. We will then have a 10-minute break, at which time you're welcome to come to the window here for a drink, or the washrooms are down the hall, whichever first occurs. At 9:30, we will open the meeting to questions to the candidates, and I will deal with that more when we get to that, but everybody will have an opportunity to ask a question of any of the candidates, and they will have an opportunity to respond. That will go on until 9:30. At 9:30, the candidates will each have 2 minutes to make a closing statement, and then we will be finished. I should tell you that there will be refreshments, late refreshments downstairs, to which you are all invited, and it'll be a good opportunity to see the historical projects which some of our school children have produced. Is really impressive. The door to the hall is just at the foot of the stairs. We'll now proceed with the business of the meeting. The first candidate to address the Assembly is Dave Levac. I don't know if I don't even know if this is turned on. I'm going to take off my jacket.
This is eating into my time. Come on.
He starts now.
All right, thank you very much. To all the organizers, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and address the good people here of St. George and surrounding area. I think I want to start by just using a little bit of time to ensure you that I'm a lifelong resident of the Riding of Brant. Spent half of my life in Brantford, and the other half of my life is now in the county. And I've gotten to be able to see the value that we all bring together. I have been known for the statement that says we need to play in the sandbox together. And that's from my career in teaching. Before that, I was a youth leader. I taught confirmation classes. I was the co-director of Camp Chiefswood for the Kiwanians for 11 years. For 14 years, I was on the United Way campaign, reinvigorated the part of the campaign back in the riding inside of Brant, outside of Brantford, into Brant. So my whole life has been dedicated to service and leadership inside of this beautiful riding of Brant. It's the most diverse. It's got 2 territories in it with 2 elected chiefs. It's got a mayor in Brantford and a mayor in Brant. We are urban and we're rural. We have rich here and we have poor here. It's the most diverse, I think, riding in the province of Ontario. And I've had the honor since 1999 serving as the MPP for the Riding of Brant. And I'm not going away. My life is going to be here. It always was, and it always will be. On June 12th, I would appreciate your vote, but most importantly, choose wisely. Look at the people you've got. This is about our riding. This is about sometimes standing up to your own party and sometimes telling your party, that's not going to help my riding. The first time I met Dalton McGuinty, I said to him, I'm running for the Liberals, but if you ask me to choose between the party and my riding, I choose my riding. And if that riding asks me to choose between them and my family, I choose my family. And I know that all of you think the same way. And I'd love to bring our message of hope and the dreams and our aspirations to Queen's Park and having them help us do what we need to do and not have Queen's Park tell us what we have to do. So on June 12th, vote for Levac.
Thank you, Dave. The second speaker is John Trammell. Hang on just a minute. Power's on. There you go.
Can you hear me? No. Not yet. Not yet. To do anything? Yeah, I'm pretty close. All right. Okay. Johnny Engineer Trammell, 80th election, 78 losses previously, 1 canceled. So I was out getting my signatures the other day, and my historical average is 20 signatures an hour nominating me for Parliament. You go stand on a street corner at Market and Colborne and see if you can get 20 people an hour to nominate you for Parliament. How do you think I do that? Charisma? Power? Well, actually, I let them see my knife, but other than that, 20 signatures an hour is pretty spectacular. How do you do that? Well, it's not charisma, it's this Let's program. I say, if you nominate me, I'm going to set this up so that single mothers with kids and poor people can list their services and what nights they're free to babysit online. And in that way, one lady babysits 3 ladies' kids while the other 3 go out for a party once in a while. And there's a good chance once that kind of a time bank, Let's support network is set up, there'll be a lot less depressed single mothers suiciding themselves, right? So, if you do a search for Let's Time Bank, this has been around since I engineered this in 1984. 30 years ago, people were signing up to these little networks where they could get a break by babysitting each other's kids. And even though they're broke, they could pay themselves in 1-hour bills. And next thing you know, the mechanic will say, well, I'll take 3 of those because I want babysitting. And a dentist says, well, I'll take 6 of those 1-hour bills because I need babysitting. And next thing you know, you add them to the list, and you've got a barter network with underground currency, which allows people who have jobs like you, who do join, to leave more of your cash in the bank. Because you're doing your trades with the alternate currency. So what are the advantages of leaving your cash in the bank instead of getting a loan or taking it out? Well, I'll leave that to you to figure out. I'm just going to point out that this Let's Time Bank software is responsible for bringing a lot of joy around the world by organizing networks of self-support people, poor people with no money, by giving them a new kind of poker chip to do their trades. Now, I've been running in Brant for the last 11 years. And I offered this 11 years ago. And that means that we got 11 years worth of suicided single mothers who couldn't take the stress because they never got a night out. Hey, you single mothers, you know, right? Who's going to take care of the kids if you ain't there? And after all those 11 years of me pushing this Let's Time Bank software. Oh, then again, it didn't help when the expositor left my thing blank and they could have put in about the babysitting bucks. But here's the point. You could have had me 11 years ago. And instead, you got Dave Levac and 11 years of nothing. And you're going to get another Dave Levac, because who wins election is the guy with the biggest fleet of cars, carrying the biggest bunch of ignorant, uninformed voters to the polls, and Dave's always going to have the edge on that.
Thank you, John.
I said there'd be bloodletting tonight. It ain't over.
The next speaker is Ken Burns.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming out tonight. My name's Ken Burns, and I'm the Green Party of Ontario candidate for Brant. I also want to thank the organizers of this event, Dave and Roy and Cliff, I think, for putting this, the first debate, together. And I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight, as I think this is a very important part of our democracy, listening to what everybody has to say and getting informed in advance of June 12th and casting a ballot on June 12th. I also am a resident of Brant. I have a small renewable energy business here, and I've worked in Brant, and I've also commuted to Toronto for work. So I've been both a business owner in the community and also a commuter. I'm also a woodlot owner here in the community and a member of several committees, both in Brantford and in Brant.
Got a good idea?
What's more important to me is getting involved and getting engaged in your community. And that's what all of you are doing here tonight, is getting engaged in your community, getting engaged in this discussion. Part of the reason that I decided to run as a candidate is because I am concerned that politics is broken right now. In the last election, only 50% or just under 50% of the people voted. And that's people that were so discouraged by what they see at Queen's Park, so discouraged by the petty and partisan politics that are getting in the way of good policy that they don't even come out to vote anymore.
They didn't know
And I
about
want to
Lex, that's
change
why.
that.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
John, would you please refrain?
Trying to make it entertaining.
Please refrain.
He's boring us.
Start again.
We need to focus on long-term policy that puts the people first. We need to return honesty, integrity, and good policy to Queen's Park. And that starts with an honest conversation about the opportunities and challenges ahead of us. And an honest conversation with Ontarians, because I think that part of the problem is that decisions are being made behind closed doors, that people aren't being given the truth, that policies are being drafted with partisan interest, policies are being drafted to try and get votes, and not thinking about good policy and putting the people first. So I'm looking forward to an honest conversation with Ontarians about that. And the other reason that I'm running is because I believe in the potential of Brant along those lines. Brantford and Brant and Six Nations together as three communities have an incredible potential to lead the way as a sustainable community. Dave mentioned some of the features of our community along that way and saying we have incredible potential as a trio of communities to be able to demonstrate the best in sustainable development that our rural, urban, and First Nations communities can present together. So we're presenting a platform that's based on building a rich and resilient economy, giving our children the best opportunity they can to thrive in our future, and protecting the places we love, protecting our farmland and source water, and we'll talk more about that. So thank you very much for everybody for coming out tonight and listening and engaging in this debate, and please do vote on June 12th.
The next speaker is Rob Ferguson.
My name is Rob Ferguson. I am the Libertarian candidate here in the Riding of Brant. I own a marketing and advertising business, small business, like many other small businesses in Brant and throughout the province of Ontario. I've felt the crunch of big government. I want to provide an alternative to big government, and that's less government, putting more control into you. It's your property, it's your business, it's your family. You should live your life the way you see fit. You should run your business the way you see fit. You should be able to enjoy your property as you see fit without government interference. The Libertarians' philosophy is about returning personal liberties and allowing prosperity, personal prosperity, to the individual. Big government dictates how to live. We want to return that back to you. It's your choice. Tonight we will cover all kinds of issues. Tonight it's about you. I've said for a long time into politics that politicians talk and leaders listen. It's time to say no to the big governments. It's time to put you first. Thank you.
The next speaker is Alex Felsky.
Thank you. So I am Alex Felsky. I'm your New Democrat candidate for this June 12th election. Before I begin, I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight. I'd like to thank the organizers very much and also my fellow candidates for being here. I want to acknowledge in particular both Dave and Phil for their many years of public service, and it really is to be commended, so thank you. As a mother of a young family and a small business owner, I understand the needs facing today's families and businesses. An NDP government will focus on fundamentals. This is creating jobs, making life more affordable, improving health care, and making government accountable. On the doorsteps, people are so excited to hear our message and the change and recognize that Andrea Horvath is the only leader who's making sense. Too many families are left waiting for care, trying to juggle caring for an aging parent while sending kids to school. Our plan provides relief to those who are overstretched families, including a fully refundable caregiver tax credit. From speaking with young people, I know that new graduates are struggling to find work to be able to afford to pay off their overwhelming student debts. Temp agencies are out of control in our riding, and they keep people out of what should be good-paying local jobs. No strings attached giveaways for corporations have not delivered jobs. And it's time we end this tired approach and reward job creators with a targeted tax credit. Wait times at our hospital are still very high. For anyone who's been recently will know. Now, Tim Hudak and Phil Gillies' plan is to cut 100,000 frontline workers, but that doesn't make any sense. We, as New Democrats, will cut ER wait times in half by hiring 250 new nurse practitioners. And this is a model that's tried and proven at St. Mike's Hospital in Toronto. It does reduce wait times by half. Skyrocketing energy prices are another concern that are killing jobs, squeezing families, and leaving many seniors out in the cold. Our plan will make life more affordable by reducing hydro bills and auto insurance rates for hardworking middle-class families. We can create jobs by rewarding job creators and small business. We can make life more affordable by reducing your hydro bills and saving you money on auto insurance. We can end the scandals and waste of public tax dollars. We can invest in your priorities, starting with healthcare and education. It's time for change. People in Ontario do not have to choose between failed Conservative agenda or a corrupt Liberal government. People are ready for change that respects their hard work, provides opportunities for families, and stands up for what's right. New Democrats will get the job done. Thank you.
The next speaker is Phil Gillies.
Thank you.
I don't know.
No. Thank you very much, David. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here tonight along with our fellow candidates. I was just here in this hall last night for the Concert for Curtains. So last night it was bagpipes in here, and tonight it's politicians. I hope you can tell the difference. So I know many of you in the room. I grew up in Brantford, of course, went to school there, worked there. I was the MPP for the old riding of Brantford for 2 terms, and after some years in business life, am happy to join my fellow candidates in this race to see who will be representing Brant riding after June the 12th. So, I believe that this current Ontario election is one of the most important in our province's history. Our voters are faced with a stark choice. Do we want more of the mismanagement, waste, and scandal that we have suffered under the Liberal government? Or do we want change? Do we want nothing done to address our record-high debt, deficit, and taxes? Or do we want leaner, more efficient government that respects the taxpayer's ability to pay? Do you want your hydro rates, already the highest in North America, to go up another 40% in the next 5 years, as will happen if the Liberals are re-elected? Or do you want something done to keep energy affordable? Should we have to suffer through 4 more years of billion-dollar scandals, like the politically motivated gas plant disaster, the Orange Air ambulance mess, and the e-health situation, all of them sinkholes for money, your money? And these things have plagued us, I believe, far too long. Or do you want change? And that's what I'm hearing on the doorsteps, and that's what I'm hearing in the coffee shops. People want change. They want a government that will respect them and that will start living within its means. They want integrity and openness, not a premier's office that is under 3 separate OPP investigations. Change is what the Ontario PCs and I are offering. A program that will grow new and existing businesses, large and small, through tax cuts. A program that will create hundreds of thousands of new jobs and stop the private sector job drain of the Liberal years. A new energy program that will give a break to homeowners and industry by reclaiming one of Ontario's traditional strengths, which is affordable energy. I'm looking forward so much to hearing your questions and comments this evening. I'm the kind of person and the kind of politician who has always seen differing views as something to be learned from as opposed to something to be dismissed. And so thank you for having me, and let's hope we have a great evening. Thank you.
In the absence of the 7th candidate, that is the end of this segment. The second segment is a question which has been prepared for each of the candidates, the same question. It relates to the boundary dispute between the county and the city. And before reading the question, I would like to note the presence of Mayor Eddy of Brant County, and I believe Councillor John Wheat, the councillor from St. George. I didn't see any others, but thank you, gentlemen, for being here. They will be holding a meeting here tomorrow night to inform people about their thoughts on the boundary discussions. I was going to say dispute, but discussions, and I would encourage all of you to come to that meeting. The question. There has been currently a discussion of possible transfer of county land to the city of Brantford. We have seen some discussion relating to the request to Queen's Park to get a decision sent down from there. The question that we will ask each of the candidates in the same order as they spoke first is the following. If you are elected to represent Brant at Queen's Park, what will you do to ensure that this issue has a local resolution? And how will you see to it that Queen's Park offers guidance, but not imposition of a solution? You'll forgive me if I've slightly reworded the question you have in front of you, but there it is. And the first speaker will be Dave Levac.
Thanks, Roy. Well, let's do a little history. I believe there was a party previous to the present government that imposed its will on several communities across the province and basically amalgamated people that didn't want to be amalgamated. And quite frankly, those experiments were not all that successful to start off with. This is slightly different. We're not talking about amalgamation. We're talking about land needs and future development. I've had some meetings with all sides, sometimes at the same table, sometimes not. So to be clear, both times I've had the opportunity to talk to personally both premiers. They've indicated to me that they have no intention of imposing any solution from Queen's Park. I don't like that, and I've told you in my opening salvo, we should be playing in the sandbox together. And quite frankly, we've almost come to conclusion twice. There were a couple of solutions that were on the edge of being acceptable. The information is what we really need to have in order to verify the needs of the city and the needs of the county. Within those, each zone, area, elected officials have to listen to their own people, and they have to find that as a balance. I'm a firm believer in getting into the sandbox and playing together. That also includes negotiating. And a local solution is appropriate. Except to say this, I want information. I want the correct information. I don't want someone's interpretation. We need to make sure that we do this as honestly as possible. in terms of what do each of us need. I've said this before as well. When Brant is successful, Brantford and Six Nations is successful. When Six Nations is successful, Brantford and Brant. And when Brantford is successful, Brant and Six Nations.
Thank you. The next speaker will be John Bell.
Master of Boolean algebra and logic. This is my case in federal court. 250 medical applicants want their marijuana or they're going to die, and we're going to have repeal next month. Now my argument, I'm healthy. I'm saying I wanted to prevent what it's good for once you get it, before you get it. And I also want it, since a new 2006 article by University of Saskatchewan says it grows new brain cells, I told the judge I want as many new brain cells as I can get. So, that explains, marijuana, why I'm so sharp and they're so dull. Now, this question here about what do we do if Queen's Park offers guidance and imposes a solution? They got no solution, right? I can't think of one. What kind of guidance do you expect from them in their sandbox? Gotta think outside the sandbox, Dave. Anyway, my thinking outside the sandbox is, I got enough money. Now, if all these guys had enough money, and they weren't all so broke, you think they'd be arguing about the deal so much? And if there's a way where they can save all the interest and debt service the morons are now throwing away, and they've got that extra debt service to pay and have a different kind of a negotiation, maybe that's solvable. So I got no clue how to solve this, but I know Dave and his sandbox no clue either, and to say will they impose a solution when they ain't got one, and will they impose guidance when they ain't got none, well that's silly, isn't it? Don't worry, this goes out on the internet so you don't have to get it.
Next speaker. Ken Burns.
Thanks very much. Well, a lot of people have heard me talk about this, and I believe a local solution is the only solution, and I want to pick up on some of the themes that Dave talked about. But for me, it's not a question, it is about negotiation, but it's not a question of boundary adjustment. It's about cooperation and collaboration between the three communities, not about annexation of one community by another. I think that the local solution that needs to be discussed more is how the three communities, Brantford, Brant, and Six Nations, can work together, because I do agree that what's good for one of the communities is good for all of the communities. Economic development in Brant, if there's new jobs, a new employer that locates in Brant, that benefits Six Nations and it benefits Brantford as well. And the same goes all around. I think for each of the three communities, I'm a huge proponent that Brantford needs to build up and not spread out. It's better for all of the communities. Thank you. It's more expensive for the city of Brantford to spread out and continue to develop subdivisions the way that it has in the past. It's more expensive to deliver the services like transit, infrastructure, water, sewage, roads, you name it. It's more expensive to do it in subdivisions than it is to build up. It's more expensive to the extent, in London they did a study on it, it was $2.5 billion. I'm already at a time and I barely feel like I got started on this. So I'm going to have to jump to the end. We need to build up, not spread out, because it's better for the communities. We need to protect our farmland and source water for the intrinsic value they provide, as well as the economic drivers that they provide. The farms are a huge economic driver. We need to support the farmers, and we need to change the laws. Places to grow, and the Places to Grow legislation is the root of the problem that we have. So what would I do would be to address that, address our population growth that supports the people of Brant, Brant County, and Six Nations. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Rob Ferguson.
I'm just trying to visualize David Levesque's sandbox. Just can't do that. Libertarians believe, like I said in the opening statement, that it's about property rights. And it should be on a volunteer basis. You should never be coerced into anything by any level of government. So therefore, I think that, first off, Chris Friel's a bully, and he needs to stay, as Ken says. fix what we already have. We look around, we see brownfield sites, we see derelict properties, we see abandoned properties. We need to fix what we have in Brantford. If people voluntarily give up their land, that's a different story. But what I'm hearing from Brant County is no, and we need to respect that. So if I was elected, I would fight for that honest belief that it's no. This is your property, you should enjoy your property. Thank you.
Next speaker is Alex Felsky.
Thank you. When I brought our leader, Andrea Horvath, just 2 months ago to St. George, first of all, we enjoyed apple fritters, of course, at Brown Dog just down the hill. But she was very clear when we were, excuse me?
I'm muttering, sorry.
She was very clear when we spoke about this very issue and about the need for the province to respect what's happening locally. Because she's from Hamilton, just up the road, but I also went to school at McMaster in Hamilton and lived there. And I'm very aware of the difficulties that occurred when a previous government did enforce amalgamation. And there are still people, nearly 20 years later, who are really unhappy and feel that they got the short end of the stick in the communities surrounding what is now the greater city of Hamilton. So there are real concerns around access to services, but more so and moreover, I think that we have to look at our prime farmland that if we build on, we can never recover that land. And so we need to be mindful of not only a local solution, but one that's going to take into account all of the years down the road when our children will be looking to us and saying, what kind of decisions did we make? So absolutely collaboration and discussion at the table is important, and I firmly believe we can find a made in Brantford, made in Brant solution together at the table with our Six Nations. Thank you.
The next speaker is Phil Gillies.
Thank you. It would be irresponsible for me in the middle of a provincial election campaign to say we are going to take care of this problem, rest assured, Brantford and Brant, we're on it. Because that then takes them off the hook, and we want them at the table negotiating, because I think there's largely a consensus up here. We want to see a local solution. I have to agree with what Ken said too. A lot of the origin of this problem is with the Places to Grow legislation in 2006. Is basically the McGuinty government designated Brant as a place for intensification and development, but it sort of didn't give any guidance on how that was to be done or where that was to be done. Now, I want to assure you that whatever discussions have been held by either municipality with this current government, and I've discussed this with Tim Hudak on several occasions, we will not be bound by any deals or assumptions that are being made by the present government. If you elect a PC government on June the 12th, we're starting fresh with the municipalities. So whatever running back and forth has been going on between the minister and any of our municipal leaders will be for naught if you have a new government. The last point I'd like to make on this is you don't have to go back to a previous government to see the imposition of new boundaries. The McGuinty government imposed new boundaries on Barry Innisfil in 2009. And the thing to be wary of there is that any compensation that was being negotiated between the municipalities of Barry and Innisfil was off the table. Innisfil got zip. So there is a danger. There's $16 million on the table for the county of Brant right now. Don't assume for a minute if the province steps in and imposes new boundaries. Don't assume that 16 million is there. There could be zero, and that's what we saw in Barry Innisfil.
Thank you to the candidates. We're now going to have a 15-minute break. There are drinks available on my left. There are washrooms behind the stage, not necessarily in that order. And we will reconvene at 20 minutes past 8. We come to the section of our meeting tonight for the individual questions. I would ask that if you have a question to pose to one or more of the candidates, you stand up on my left, and I will recognize people in the order that they are in line. I would ask that you do not ask a second question until everybody has had an opportunity to ask their first question, and I'll be the judge of that. You can stand up, you can address your question to any individual candidate or to two or more of the candidates, and they will provide you with a response, I'm sure. If any of the other candidates wish to weigh in on the subject of the question, they may do so. I would ask the candidates kindly to keep their comments to a minimum so that we can have as many questions as we can before the end of the evening. So if you would like to line up on my left, and I would be pleased to take the first question. Before asking, Before asking your question, I would ask you to give me your name and your place of residence.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Kay. I reside in Brantford.
And you have a question?
Yes,
To one or other of the candidates?
All of them.
All of them, okay.
All of them. Not too long ago, the city, if you go on Google search the Kitchener paper, Kitchener Record, they reported an Ontario Municipal Board issue that was being settled and it had not yet been challenged because the City of London recognized it in their urban planning that the #1 problem that the Ontario College of Family and Physicians highlighted was addictions in Ontario. And so they were wrestling through how do they as a city arrange for med clinics, this, that, helping people pull themselves out of addiction. That impacts all facets of Ontario. It's the #1 problem. Check it out. Kitchener Record featured it. London made it a priority in the discussions. What's your government going to do to bring us out of this, to encourage what needs to be done? I liked reading that Kitchener Record article because it showed the discussions. They were trying out some ideas.
I think you asked.
I want to hear what you are going to say.
Specifically, perhaps you could ask specifically the question. You covered a good deal of ground there.
Yeah,
Having to
just
do
let
with
me understand where it's coming from.
addiction.
How are you going to help Ontario's #1 problem with addictions?
Right. So let's start on the left and we'll go to the other end of the table, since everybody gets asked the same question.
Well, thank you very much for that question. Now, addiction and mental health have a direct association. Addiction clearly is a health concern. When it comes to detox centers or treatment facilities, the board here, the blue, the orange, the red, the green, they all say, hey, addiction is a medical concern and we need to publicly fund it and we need to invest more money. But the first thing these guys do when they encounter an addict is throw their butt in jail. It can't be both. We need to decriminalize and allow medical professions to take over and complete the mission of treatment. These people should not be in jail. They should be in a doctor's office. That's where it starts and that's where it's going to end.
Thank you, Rob. Okay.
Thank you. I think that first of all, I can unequivocally say that from the Green Party's perspective, we don't believe that they should be in jail, so I'll just correct you on that one. But the more important point, and we're supposed to be quick in this, is that I want to get across, is that we need a better conversation about how to handle addiction in our community. And that conversation has to include more people. There are too many voices that are not involved in that discussion. This isn't just a question for politicians on how do we do it. This isn't just a question for our municipal leaders. We need to need to talk to the people who are dealing with poverty in their lives, who are dealing with addiction, who are dealing with mental health issues. The biggest challenge that I think that our medical system is facing right now is that we're trying to deliver services, but we're not delivering them in the way that the people who need them can access them appropriately in a timely fashion. And that's the part we need to look at. It's, I think, as much a matter of how we're trying to reach out and how we're trying to provide services as it is of ensuring that when we figure that out, that they have adequate funding to help the people who are in need of help. So, thank you.
Ken.
Mary Kay, thank you for the question because I agree with you. It is an absolute stress on our system completely, not counting the individual, their families, the schools, the judicial system, the police system, the healthcare system, it just permeates right through into our entire community. That's why in 2011, I didn't read my playbook for the government. What I did was identify through the much work that was going on in our community, and I led a community-based consultation on the development of a detox rehabilitation center for the city of Brantford. And it was actionable. We now have the foundation. The detox center has been approved on the funding side, and it's now making sure that all we have to do now is complete the rest of the negotiation through the LIN and the government, through the Ministry of Health, that we'll finally have for our region a detox rehabilitation center. If we do not deal with this, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on all the peripheral agencies that we have. Can you imagine the improvements that we could implement by having detox center rehabilitation so that the addict is no longer a stress on the system, their family, and loved ones? It's here, it's happening, and I'm proud of the fact that I used my leadership to pull us all together to actually have it built.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes, I have no disagreement on this issue. I have some experience in this area. In my professional life, I've done consulting work for the Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse. I've actually been to one of the planning meetings and consultation meetings that Dave had last year, and I totally agree. We need a rehab and detox center. In my meetings with the Brant Community Health System, I've been told there is a lot of strain on active care beds at $1,100 a day. People who are in those beds because of addiction problems related to drugs and alcohol. The strain on our emergency wards also. And if you talk to the Chief of Police in Brantford, he'll tell you that approximately 80% of the crime in Brantford is drug related. So we have to do something new, we have to do something bold to address this, and I really do think that a rehab and detox center is the way to go.
Thank you, Phil. Alex?
Thank you, Mary Ellen. In my work as an addictions counselor, in my past job, I'm very familiar with the struggles and the strains on families and also on society. And one of the things that's really important is that when someone's in crisis, they can go and get help, right? They can go to the emergency department and know that there will be someone qualified who will be compassionate. And it's very unlikely that with average wait times in emergency rooms being 10 hours, that anyone with an addictions problem is going to be able to sit in those hard plastic chairs and wait their turn to see someone. What's the likelihood they're going to be able to stay when they're in crisis? I'd say slim to none. So the first point of contact for people when they're ready to accept help, when they're ready to reach out and finally say, I need some extra help, I'm not coping, right now it's not there. So, you know, this sounds great that we're going to be having this detox center, but we've waited a very long time, and I'm not sure how we're going to address these needs when we have a plan from the Conservatives to cut 100,000 frontline workers. How is that going to work out? I don't understand that. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Alex. John?
Wow, 80% of the busts are drug-related, and 75% are for pot busts. Get it? How stats work? They bust pot smokers and claim that, wow, drugs are the problem. Now look, Dave's been trying to get one detox center. One! Funding's there, but long process. Gonna have the next 3-4 years to work on it. You know what happened in Argentina when they went broke? The union said, you know what we're gonna do? Nobody gets laid off to the government. Because you got no money, we'll take small denomination $10 bonds if we can use them for hydro, taxes, medical, and licenses, and that way everybody else will take them off us too. And those Argentine provinces all paid their unemployed employees and unions with bonds, $10 bonds, and wiped out unemployment. More guys could work for bonds. Now, we could do the same thing. Oh my God, I've been here in 3 elections, and I've been explaining to you for 3 elections so far. Of course, the fact the media didn't report to anybody what I was saying, hey, this thing didn't go up yet.
I think we're not timing these things. I think you're a little bit off the subject. We're still talking about it.
The detox center and how to come up with enough money to do 2 of them instead of none.
Finish.
I said.
Thank you.
Right? More money, do 2 detox centers instead of negotiations with Dave for none.
Thank you.
Yes. You didn't catch on I was on topic, sir?
That's enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Your name and where you live, please.
My name is Laura and I live in St. George.
And your question.
My question is for Mr. Gillies. This is my first time voting. I'm 19 and I'm starting school in the fall for a trade. And I'm just wondering how eliminating the College of Trades is going to benefit me.
Mr. Gillies.
The College of Trades, we believe, is really just a thinly veiled cash grab. The College of Trades is regulating any number of new trades that have been, in many cases, self-regulating in the past. So they're levying a charge, an annual fee, against hairdressers, against people who do framing on construction sites, against any number of areas. And it's very expensive. And it's causing grief for a lot of people who are trying to make a living. So it's going to drive up costs of construction. It's going to drive up the cost of any number of things that you access. The hairdressers are very upset about this, that they're being forced into the college. So we don't think it's the way to go. We think it's just another way, frankly, for the government to take money, along with the WSIB changes under Bill 119 last year that are hitting the same people very, very hard.
Thank you, Phil. Is there anybody else at the table who would like to comment on this?
I'm not so sure I want people who are not overseen coming to do work on my home. That would concern me.
Thank you.
But you gotta trust the community. People who have been in business for 30 years have more experience than the NDP and their magic wand creating jobs.
To be clear, the impression that got left to you is that the government is taking the money. It's for the trades themselves. It's a fee that you annually pay into the college to be the regulator of your industry. So it has no bearing, and there's not a nickel that'll go back to the government under that program. It's very similar to the teachers' college, the nurses' college, the doctors' college, the ECE college, all of the colleges that are self-regulating. That's what this is a creation of. So are they afraid that the trades don't deserve to be considered to be high-level professionals that need to have that done? And quite frankly, it's a wonderful concept and an idea to get rid of the underground economy for those people that are doing things that don't pay taxes. So that's another reason why it's a valuable exercise for you. And it's not going to take that, it's about 120 bucks a year. That's it. That's what he tried to portray as this robbery of the government. It's not true.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, just like Dave didn't have enough money for the detox center, he won't have enough money to keep your thing alive. But if you were to understand how the Argentine solution worked, and you and your people were to accept those bonds as a new kind of money, well then we could keep it alive and more. So the question is, you can vote for him for more than nothing, or you can vote for me for the Argentine solution. Duh!
Thank you, John.
I'll be very quick just to say, I think that there is, I'll pick up on a couple of points that have been spoken about, but I think there is also support for the trades because you're somebody who is investing in your education, you are investing in getting certified, and when you get into industry not being undercut by people who haven't made that investment, who aren't certified and who don't necessarily know what they're doing and may also be taking advantage of the consumer and giving your trade a bad reputation. So I think that there is protection in there for you and value for the trades as well from that perspective.
Thank you. Next question. Your name and where do you live?
My name is Marilyn Berrio, and I live in St. George. My question is for Phil Gillies. I've been an educational assistant for 25 years with the Grand Erie School Board. My understanding is that your party is wanting to cut upwards of 10,000 EAs. And I'm just wondering, it's not so much for myself because it's probably not going to affect me. I'm high enough on the seniority list. but I'm concerned for the children that I work with, that they're not going to have the help they need to be successful. And please help me understand why you're doing this.
Well, just to be clear, our proposal is to reduce the size of the greater public service by 10%. Now, the greater public service, since the Liberals came to power in 2003, has grown by 300,000 people. By reducing it by 100,000, we're only taking the province back to the employment levels that were in place in 2009. Now, Dave, you've been at Queen's Park for 15 years, and I don't remember you saying that the staffing levels were inadequate for the first 10 years that you were at Queen's Park. Secondly, the government brought in one of the top economists in the country, Don Drummond, to do the Drummond Report, which made recommendations about what the province needed to do to bring the economy and government spending under control. The Drummond Report recommended exactly this, a reduction by 100,000. And the government chose not to accept the advice of its own best advice, which was from Don Drummond. The other thing is, it strikes me as a little disingenuous that the federal government under Paul Martin did exactly what we're proposing to do. They realized that they had a problem with growing bureaucracy and greater numbers in the public service. They took steps federally to do it, and at the time, the Liberals called that sound fiscal management. Now that we're proposing the same thing, they call it draconian.
My understanding is, though, the 10,000 educational assistants are being cut in addition to the 100,000 public sector workers.
A lot, let's be clear, there are not going to be mass pink slips given out to people. A lot of what we're proposing can be done by attrition. In the greater public service in Ontario, 50,000 people retire every year. If those retirees are not replaced for 2-3 years, we will meet our goal.
Yes, we need more death.
Thank you. So, you know, I agree that there's room to find efficiencies within things like ministers' office budgets, but not with our frontline workers. Because still, Mr. Hudak and Mr. Gillies have not been clear about which workers will be on the chopping block, because our public sector workers are our nurses, there are teachers, there are EAs, there are firefighters, and there are policemen. And I find it very difficult to be clear with this, because many of us will remember when Harris came to power, and he was asked how many hospitals will have to close as a result of these cuts. And he said, none. You have my word. How many hospitals closed? 28. So I just don't accept that children in our schools who need additional support will be forced to go without, because already there isn't enough support for children in our schools who are struggling. And that's why in the NDP we've said we will increase the number of educational assistants by 1,000 to ensure that the children who need the support to be successful will be successful. Thank you.
Alex.
Thanks very much. I think you're making an excellent point. And right now, Ontario has another problem as well, which is that we're sending our special needs children home early because we don't have the resources to support them in the classroom, and that's absolutely unconscionable. The Green Party is proposing to merge the Catholic and public school boards and save about $1.6 billion in duplicate administration and busing kids past perfectly good publicly funded schools, and merge the two school boards into one English and French system so that we can invest that money back into our classroom, back into the putting the education and the children first, so that we can have more special needs support services, so that we can have more educational support in the classroom and less administration. We'll save $1.6 billion from busing our kids back past perfectly good schools. So thank you very much. We do support the teaching assistants.
Government make testing levels easier in education. They spend more money, and the hope is that we'll raise education grade averages. And traditionally, we're not seeing that. So who's failing? The parent? The student? The teachers? It's the government. Government's failing. We need to get government out of the classroom and empower parents to be involved in the education. where a parent can choose where their tax dollar goes. Does it go to that school for $900 that has best results, or does it go to that school for $1,200? But it's about empowering the parents. Right now, the government decides based on geographic location, based on their needs. We need to return that back to the personal and the individual and allow you to decide. It's your choice, or allow them to be elected and allow it to be their choice.
Thank you.
Okay, so how did the Argentine educational workers save their jobs? Are you saying they were smarter than you are? Yes. How did they save their jobs and she's going to lose her friends' jobs at 100,000 more? Are they smarter than you guys? Yeah, sounds like it.
Thank you, John.
I've explained before, get the government to pay you with small denomination paper you can spend for hydro, taxes, medical, and licenses, and it'll be as good as money, and you won't lose your jobs, and I won't consider you inferior to the Argentine teachers. Get it?
Thank you.
Pretty good, eh?
Well, thanks very much, Mayor. Thank you. The short answer is they did.
He's got an answer? Sorry. Give us your answer.
Can we shut him down?
Marilyn, thank you for your question. The short answer is they did state that they were going to get rid of 10,000 EAs. And that's on top of the 100,000 people that they were going to give pink slips to. And their idea of attrition, and they made a statement during the election, that they include maternity leave as part of that. So someone's on maternity leave, that counts towards their numbers. So the fudging is going on, and I got to tell you, we fought for and got more EAs into the system than ever before. And that reality is going to stay put when we're re-elected.
Thank you. Next. Your name and where do you live?
Trevor Sharuka, Brantford. I think I know everybody up there. Myself and my wife, we both work for ourselves. We're fortunate. And we like to work local. My wife has a home daycare and I work in marketing. But to sell our services, we both have to sell under the value of people down the road, our friends in the same businesses closer to Toronto and London, because the people in Brantford are not making the money they need to make. What can we do about getting the people in Brantford making more money so that those that are working in Brantford can make the same as their counterparts down the road?
Do you have somebody specific to ask the question?
Everybody.
Everybody. Let's start at the other end. John?
Where can we get more chips to run our game? Geez, bonds would be great chips. If I could spend them for hydro taxes, medical, and licenses. Remember when I ran for mayor of Brantford, I wanted to pay the kids with bus tickets? Instead of having empty buses running around, pay the kids with bus tickets to shovel the snow so all those old timers don't have heart attacks. Hey Dave, any old timers died on your watch? Same idea as before with the mothers. So, I got a way of reprogramming the money system computer to provide enough liquidity, chips, to give everybody a job. And that's the way, if there's enough money in the economy amongst poor people, guys like him will be able to make a decent living. So, come up with the more money. And actually, none of these guys can ever find a way of coming up with the more money because their only answer is go beg a bank.
Thank you, John.
For all. I want to create a bank.
Okay.
Thanks for your question, Trevor. It's something that really resonates with me because I'm a small service-based business owner in nearly my 7th year. And I hear you because other professionals who do the same work that I do, just up the road in Mississauga, Toronto, are able to charge about 30% more than I'm able to charge. And I know that part of the thing that we're struggling with in Brantford is the lack of good local jobs, right? We have dozens of temp agencies that are operating in Brantford and Brant. Oftentimes they don't even have a storefront, it's through a website. And because of very open rules within the Employment Standards Act, they're able to operate and oftentimes have people coming back for month after month after month. And that's not very temporary. And what that means is that they're earning several dollars less per hour than their counterparts working in the same place who are permanent employees. It means they're not eligible for benefits or for pensions. And it's a concern not only for people now trying to make ends meet to feed their families, but it's of course a concern down the road. And we know when people earn more money, they spend it locally and they support local business such as ours. And that's why part of the New Democrat plan is around rewarding job creators with a tax credit. So for people who are, and companies that are creating new jobs, we want to make sure that there are going to be good local jobs and there are those strings attached. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, Trevor, a small marketing company like yours, you live or die by the number of small businesses and large that are thriving in the community. And we need to bring more business into the Brantford area, into Brant. We propose to do that through making this the most attractive jurisdiction in North America to start and grow a business. 30% corporate tax cut is part of our proposal. We want to get control of energy costs, because that is a big thing for a lot of companies, that we have the highest energy costs in North America now. If the Liberals are re-elected, you're going to see them go up another 40% in 5 years, plus their proposals to increase payroll taxes. We also have the highest payroll taxes in all of Canada. If the Liberals are elected, they're going to bring in this pension scheme of theirs, which is for a typical worker going to take about another $1,000 out of their pocket and $1,000 out of the employer's pocket. It all makes us very unattractive to start and grow businesses. And so we are going to reverse those trends, tax cuts, get control of energy costs, and make this a place that people want to come and start and grow a business. Then you'll have a lot of clients for your marketing firm.
Thank you, Phil. Dave?
What Phil's talking about is that their party is rejecting a pension plan for 70% of the population of Ontario. And he wants to call that an increased payroll tax. What it is that it's going to be a shared responsibility between the employer and the employee, up to 1.9%, so that they can retire with about $20,000 to $25,000 instead of the locked-in CPP maxed at $14,000 annually for a pension. I honestly believe that people are perceiving this to be a progressive and a rather bold move to ensure that people who are not saving, and regrettably, there's nobody saving for the future. That's the statistic that's out there. But let's come back to the reality of what you're doing. We have to also understand, that's $1 million house that you have to buy in Toronto. What we're buying here is about a $230,000 house. They sell their houses for $1 million down there. They come back here and buy their houses for around $250,000 to $300,000, and they want to have the same. They want to bring all the prices down. That's pressure on you as well, and that's the reality of regional kind of economics. But there are some things that can be done, and I agree with what Alex is talking about. I started to bring this up in caucus a long time ago about these agencies that are coming up. They've reinvented themselves. They still have value. It's important to understand that when you break your arm, I need another secretary, I can get somebody quick, take it in a short part and move them out. That was the reality of temp agencies. They're causing a problem for us by removing that middle piece that's for the person that could spend that disposable income for you. So if we got those temp agencies under control, and I don't believe in a total ban, but I also believe in control. So what's been happening under those circumstances, we've removed some of those nuggets that they were taking from the company and from them, and we've said you can't do that anymore, and guess what's happening? They're getting those wages a little bit higher each time that they have to move forward. So when that starts to happen, that cash flow comes back to you and you can start moving your prices back up, and we become successful. And contrary to what my esteemed colleague has told you, the pension is an important issue in the province of Ontario. All we have to do now is get the feds on side and go straight to the CPP, which is a very fluid and very important program that everyone in Canada pays for.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks very much, Trevor, and excellent question. I won't dwell on it, but I also agree that we certainly need to have a conversation with employers about how to encourage full-time employment that has a living wage and a real wage, and talk about the quality of employment and reducing the role and the reliance that we see right now on the temp agencies. I think that we have to also rely on ourselves, and I say that because the corporate tax breaks are not going to create jobs. And I'll give a quick example, I hope it's quick. That Unilever just announced in Brampton the closing of its plant and the loss of almost 300 jobs in that particular community. Unilever is a sustainable company. I like them. Paul Polson has won awards for sustainability. It's not a company I'm trying to pick on, but they, in 2013, earned worldwide revenues of $65 billion. On that, they made profit of $6.5 billion. They paid Paul Polson $11 million in overall compensation for the year. For anybody to do the math, that's $2,750 an hour that he earned if he worked 80 hours a week. And he only earned $11 million in compensation relative to executive salary. That's on the low end. My point in all this is that corporate tax cuts aren't going to save jobs. No corporate tax jobs were going to save those jobs. Sorry, no corporate tax cuts were going to save those jobs in Brampton. We have to think differently. We have to invest in ourselves. We have to invest in our small businesses. We also have to, from the green policy perspective, invest in people's homes. Nobody here can promise you that they can bring energy prices down. A lot of people talk about rising energy prices, and energy prices are going to go up. We have to deal with this problem now. We've been subsidizing the cost of energy for too long, and we have to do that. We have to make our homes and businesses more affordable and competitive. And we can do that by canceling our investment in new nuclear. We'll save about $1 billion a year. We can bring in low-cost water power from Quebec at a fraction of the cost, and we can invest that in people's homes, helping them make more energy efficient and conservation in their homes. And that will create about 56,000 jobs, helping people save money by saving energy. So we'll create good local jobs in our community, helping renovators have jobs, helping us invest in our homes and save money today, tomorrow, and in the long run by saving energy.
The time that's allotted, it's hard to get a definitive answer. My fellow candidates have commented a little bit. I firmly believe that businesses are the key to job creation. But the other element of that is the cost of living, and some of the other candidates have talked about that as well. The reason our cost of living is so high is because of government control rates. If we open up the market and allow you the choice, do you want to pay the government rates or another rate? Use the phone company. At one point we had a phone company and they wanted $400 a month, you had to pay it if you wanted a phone. Then we opened up the market. Now we have internet companies, television companies. We have hundreds of different companies that you can choose. It forced the big guy to lower his rates. And the same thing can happen with any utility. Now the NDP talk about temps and the Conservatives talk about temps. One of the biggest strains to an employer is being forced into things such as paying more minimum wage. We see $11 an hour, but an employer sees much more. There's much more tax that the employer has to pay. So every time the minimum wage goes up, you've created temp jobs.
Thank you. Next question.
My name is Michael Johnson. I'm from Caledonia, a small town near from here. And I just had a quick question for Rob Ferguson, the Libertarian.
Speak up, please.
Oh, can't hear me. I'm from Caledonia. My name is Mike, and I'm a fellow Libertarian. And I just have a lot of sympathy for Libertarians because I think
maybe you should ask your question.
Okay. Well, it was just more about advice, how to get people to embrace liberty and the logic of it.
And that question is addressed to
Rob.
I would have thought so.
And do you see the movement like growing, the Libertarian Party, and how to?
A surprise question.
I was just wondering about the Libertarian movement.
Okay, perfect.
In a few brief words.
Is libertarianism is a growing movement. It's an alternative to traditional government control and say. What libertarianism is about is removing them and allowing you to have your personal choice. Return your personal liberties, your freedom of choice, to allow you to live your life, run your business, instead of having them do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? John, yes? Briefly, please.
Well, I'd like to point out that in 1988, Let's was on the Green Party platform. But they ended up dropping it. They just weren't bright enough to keep it along. And about 10 years ago, I made a presentation on Let's time banks to the Libertarian Party. Same thing there, not bright enough to understand it. Here's my point. I wanted to be a Libertarian. First party I ever voted for was Libertarian. Okay? I think that cops ought to be out of gambling, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Okay? Personal liberties. But I'm also a SOCRED, a libertarian SOCRED. I believe in interest-free credit. So I have the I believe in all the great things of the libertarians, but I also want to fix the money. So just think of it this way. I'm a libertarian, I have a libertarian heart and a social credit brain, and they just got a libertarian heart and no brain. Oh yeah, that was a beauty, lady! Didn't you get it?
Since he's addressed me,
Yes. Watch out.
since he's my ride,
Doesn't matter, doesn't matter.
Enough.
Play fair and you get a ride.
Is there anybody else who wants to talk about libertarians? Going once, going twice. Thank you. I think you actually. Yes, Doc. Your name and where do you live?
Excuse me. My name is Charles Pickett. I live in St. George. I have lived here for since 1960. I was a physician at one time. I am now long since retired. My question is to actually most of the panel, but particularly to our local member, Monsieur Levesque. And it concerns the local health integration network. Not that organization in general, but our particular network. I would ask, sir, if you could provide us with the total budget figures of our particular local health integration network. And then secondly, the salaries of the executives, including the benefits of our LIN.
Dave?
Specifically, I believe the LIN is responsible, for those that don't know what the LIN is, it's the localized health delivery system that was put into place that took over from where it was coming at Queen's Park. So when your health care was being delivered in our province, it was being delivered directly from Queen's Park through the Ministry of Health. The concept, which has been used in various places in Canada and around the world, is to take the centralization and put the LIN into communities based in, there's 14 different LINs in the province of Ontario. So they broke up the province, put each one responsible for the delivery through the health ministry, receiving the budget, and then they do all the localized delivery of the health care. Most of the health care. Not all health care is delivered directly. It's sometimes delivered directly by the Ministry of Health under some circumstances. I believe our LIN is responsible for about 202 different services, about 220 programs, including hospitals, all of the healthcare deliveries that we know, the family health teams. So that LIN number 14 is responsible for that delivery. And I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of about a $2 billion price tag. And as far as the individual salaries are concerned, I don't have them off the top of my head or even a note, but I believe salaries for the LIN CEOs have been readjusted and capped, and I think the most anyone makes is somewhere around $200,000 to $300,000 a year as the executive director.
Anybody else like to speak?
Yeah, our party would scrap the LINs. It's another layer of bureaucracy that was created by the McGuinty government to be between the Ministry of Health and the local hubs. And we feel it's not necessary. I can't tell you what the total salaries would be for the LIN office in Burlington, which covers Brant. I can tell you the last time I looked at the website, there are 19 professional staff there. So 19 staff sitting in an office in Burlington collecting, I'm sure, very good salaries, while we have 5, 6, 7 hour waits in the emergency wards at the BGH and at the Willett. We want to concentrate on frontline service delivery. Now, I've had 2 meetings with the Brant Community Health System Administration, and I've asked them, if we scrap the LHINs, could you administer through committees between the health hubs? Could you do the regional administration and coordination that's necessary to run the system directly under Queen's Park? And they have told me, yes, we could. And frankly, I've asked them, would you miss the LHINs if they were gone? And they said, not much. So we want to put healthcare dollars into nurses, nurse practitioners, doctors, frontline service. We want to flatten administration and have a more efficient system, and we think we can do it without the LHINs.
Thank you. Alex?
If the system was working so well for us as it sits currently, we wouldn't have the huge long wait times that we do in Emerge. We wouldn't have so many orphan patients who cannot see a doctor, who cannot afford, if they live in the county, if they live in Brantford, to take a $70 cab ride to the Willett at Paris. So what we do need is more frontline workers to address the needs of people in all of our communities. But I still don't understand, how are we going to get more frontline workers and invest dollars in frontline workers like nurses, like PSWs, with Mr. Hudak's plan to cut 100,000 public service workers. It doesn't add up. One thing the NDP will do is create an additional 1,400 long-term beds that will eliminate completely the crisis wait times for these beds. And this is something that, as we see a growing population of seniors every year, this is a need that we need to fill now, because already the wait list is too long and people are going without.
Anybody else? Can I be permitted a one? You said we could do a one-liner maybe once during the debate.
I'll have to say, and then you can have one line.
Okay, thank you.
Libertarians believe an open market can provide. I do want to comment on wait times of hospitals. Right now, the ministry dictates 100,000 people, you get 1 ER doctor. That should be put in the priority of the hospital. On Friday nights, we see 300 people, we need 2 doctors. Now, since you brought up the PSW issue, for around 8 months now, I've looked at PSWs abusing seniors and disabled in the community. Got ministers responsible for seniors response saying they're there. The Minister of Health saying they're there. I've extended my invites on this issue about seniors and disabled to all of these people. But the only one who showed up was Mark LaFerrier of the NDP. How dare they sit here and talk about what's priority? I have a 94-year-old man who's a World War II veteran in this community wanting help from his government, and you all said no. On June 12th, I say yes.
Okay, thank you. One line. One line. It is right in the PC party platform. We are not taking a dollar out of healthcare. That's very clear. We are going to flatten administration and put it into frontline service.
Next question.
I got land for sale.
Where? Sorry?
Swampland.
I got that one-liner too.
Florida.
Your name and where do you live, please?
My name is Nora Futen. I live between Paris and St. George.
And your question?
My question has to do with my concern about our democracy when fewer than 50% are probably going to be voting in this election. And I have talked to so many people and said, have you any idea what it cost in the past for you to have the right to vote, and now you don't want to vote? Well, many people say to me, I have voted so many times and I've never elected the winner. So I feel that the government does not represent me. So my question is, would you consider revisiting proportional representation of some sort? Why or why not?
And your question is addressed to?
Well, I think Dave and Phil mainly.
Dave and Phil. Dave first and then Phil.
Well, I'm glad you said revisit, because it was put on the docket in the 2 elections ago. when there was a citizenship assembly for the entire province and they came back with a model that was to be voted on. I think it was flawed in terms of the proposal, and I think it was flawed in terms of the process, so I'm going to put that on the table. I believe they should have given us a year to analyze and debate and understand what the model was, although it was a good first step towards moving into a different way of looking at how proportional representation works. I'm going to tell you flat out, I wouldn't have a problem of revisiting it at all. I think it's worthy of debate and discussion, and importantly, process-driven. Importantly, process-driven. Make sure that there's no hooks, there's no games, there's no tricks. Get the information out, vote on a process that everyone would feel comfortable using.
Bill, thank you.
Thank you, Nora. This is a great concern for me because when I was MPP in Brantford years ago, a typical turnout rate for a provincial election was 70, 72, 73%. Federal elections back then, you could easily see 80% turnout. Now for a provincial, we're looking at 50 to 55, and federal, I think, something just over 60%. So we do need to do something to get more people to exercise their franchise. The referendum question that was put several elections ago was flawed. A lot of people didn't understand it and therefore rejected it out of hand. I am open to revisiting not only proportional representation, but I think we should look at other options. The possibility of internet voting. We should look at everything. We need to get more people participating in our democracy. And so the short answer, Nora, is I'm open to anything we can reasonably do that would reach that goal.
Thank you. John?
Well, I love proportional representation. It means the little voices get a little bit heard. Now, as for the 50% and the demoralizing, depressing turnout, look what you got to look at. They come here, they barely read their written statements. Boring. Couldn't you at least memorize it? I come here with something to say and just say it. And they gotta come here and read. Anyway, with proportional representation, you have a chance to get me.
Thank you, Before Alex is on, I think you have to admit that's the best line of the night.
Clearly, the passion of my fellow candidates is evident. And certainly proportional representation has been something that the NDP has been pushing for federally and provincially for some time because we think it makes sense. But it's very true that when we have the kind of scandals that we've seen over the past years with the Liberal government, the mismanagement, the waste of our tax dollars, of course people are fed up. They're disappointed and they're disheartened, and I'm right there along with them, and that's why I'm running.
Me too.
So that we can bring change that's going to actually respect people's tax dollars. Because it's time to bring back some engagement, and it's so wonderful in my campaign office to see all the young people who are out working hard every day, knocking on doors and participating, and I really feel very hopeful for the future. And I commend all of you for being here because it shows that you're interested, and I know that all of you are going to vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, and great question, Nora. I think part of the challenge of why the referendum was the way it was in 2007 was because people didn't have a chance to really learn and understand about proportional representation and what it could mean, and it was never promoted properly or properly presented to the people for consideration with education. I think that a lot of people, and the reason why we're seeing such a drop in people participating isn't about access to the polls. I think that Elections Ontario does a fabulous job, like Elections Canada, of making it easier and possible for people to vote, including being able to go directly to people's homes for them to cast a ballot if people are homebound. I think that the reason that people are discouraged from voting is because they're tired of the petty and partisan politics, some of which we've seen here tonight. And that kind of thinking, that petty and partisan politics, getting in the way of good policy and has led to some of the scandals that we've talked about, because people in partisan politics are more interested in getting the seats than they are in getting good public policy. I think what we have to do is look at something like proportional representation, which encourages collaboration. It is possible to design a system, and it can be designed by the people, for the people, a system that does allow for you to vote for what you want. And I think that's the biggest message, is to be able
I'm
to
the
vote
engineer.
Enough. John, that's the last time.
Oh,
It's the last time.
Fix the system. It's too perfect.
Sorry. Sorry.
I think that it's important to give people something to vote for and not have people afraid of voting against, or having to vote against something, voting because they're afraid of this person or that person getting elected. Giving people, returning honesty, integrity, and good policy to Queen's Park and giving people something to vote for. That's the best way to return voter participation, and that's what we would like to see. Thanks.
Thank you.
I agree with them that there was not enough information. 2007, I was with another party, and I found even from London to Brantford, that was one of the biggest issues. I love the idea of a new ideal. I think it's great that you could vote for the party that you've always supported, but vote for a stronger candidate. Think of it, some ridings could have 2 MPPs. A prime example of this would be, recently I had come across a big conservative sign, and the senior came out and she says, well, my husband passed away 15 years ago, and I let them put it up there as a tribute to my husband. I gave her one of our choice books, and she said, well, you can have my vote, but the sign stays. And that's a prime example where people can voice their opinions on their candidate and their party. I love the idea that at some point there could be some fringe candidates that are elected to Queen's Park to give other alternatives a choice. That's where it starts. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Yes, ma'am. Name and where do you live and your question.
Oh, come on. My name is Karen Schmutz. I live in Brant County. I'm an old lady, I'm tired, and I'm fed up. So my question is for the 3 candidates representing the parties that have been in power in Ontario and in our country. Phil Gillies, in response to one of the questions, stood up and said, if elected, the Conservatives would start with a clean slate and do whatever they chose to do. The others, when they've been in power, have done exactly the same thing. We are paying for reinvention after reinvention after reinvention of the same wheel. Is there no security for Ontarians in Ontario? And what is the point of the laws, which supposedly the parliamentarians are spending all of their time and energy on?
Thank you. And your question is addressed to the
To
3
Dave,
people.
Phil, and Alex.
Who wants to go first?
Okay, well, when I said we would start with a clean slate, I was referring specifically to the boundaries issue, because I know there's concern in Brant particularly that things are being negotiated behind closed doors between some officials locally and some officials at Queen's Park. And I wanted people to be assured that if you elect a new government, we won't necessarily be bound by anything that's being negotiated behind closed doors by those individuals.
Very good clarification. And in regard to the health question, you provided the same answer. No, what was set up by one government, we would cancel that and we'd start altogether differently and re-spend my dollars and everybody else's dollars.
That's almost the second question.
Oh, it sounded like
Well,
that was good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously there's continuity. The underpinnings of our society, a good education system, a good healthcare system, a good system of transportation, those things are constants, and they're going to continue regardless of whether you elect Alex or Dave or myself. But there are differences, obvious differences, in terms of how we feel some services should be delivered. What I'm saying is we believe that the emphasis should be on frontline service. So will we trim administration and will we cut layers of bureaucracy where we feel it can be done? Yes, we will.
Thank you. Dave?
Valid point, and expressed frustration about the lack of continuity in terms of the delivery of services. Every party has done it. And I think what I'm hearing you say is, don't you think it's time for us to stop breaking the thing and starting over again?
Thank you.
what I do believe in, and that is the basic foundation of who we are and what we deliver. If we start to move on that, that's where I think the alarm bells should go. So what you need to do is analyze the positions of everyone and ask them the specific question. Are you specifically going to do this? Are you going to do that? Because that's what I believe is the foundation of how we should be delivering it. That means in healthcare, are you going to cut services? Are you going to add services? Are you going to rearrange some things so that I can get the services delivered better to me? Instead of saying, I'm taking that out and throwing it out and I'm going to offer you something brand new and it will take me more time to get it up and running, but don't worry about it, we'll eventually get there. I think that's what you're saying.
Yes.
And I hate that. Personally, I hate it, and I've spoken out against it from both parties. When I was in opposition and in the government. There's got to be process and there's got to be continuity and better service delivery, not cut. It's been done in several countries, austerity, cut, cut, cut. I'll show you how to take care of the, but it means your kids aren't getting a grant. It means that you're not going to get better health care. It doesn't mean your education system is going to suffer, but trust me, I'll get it down and it'll trickle down. I'll make the rich richer and I'll get the big corporations those tax cuts, and the next thing that's going to happen, it'll all come back down to us. No way.
Thank you.
Alex?
Well, you know, it's interesting to hear you say that, Dave, because that's exactly what the Liberals did, is they cut corporate taxes, telling us that this would create jobs. And we know that that hasn't happened, otherwise we wouldn't be in this situation now. So, you know, this is worrying that Conservatives' plan is a 30% tax cut, because as you say, you're very right. If that kind of tax cut worked, we would not be having a problem with good jobs locally. So, you know, I hear your frustrations, and I echo the importance of continued good services and a sense of stability and hope for the future, that we're not continually going back to the drawing board again and again. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Well, it's true. Reinvent failure. Reinvent failure. Reinvent failure. Reinvent failure. Constant reinventing failure. Well, guess what? Expecting something different from doing the same is the definition of insanity. And not wanting to know what anybody but the same three who are constantly failing is the epitome of stupidity.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, except I'm a time. Thanks very much. I think part of what you're asking about is why isn't there more long-term thinking in government that puts people first and puts good policy first? And that's a real question that we still haven't heard the answer to in the responses that we've heard so far. We've heard three different approaches. We've heard three very partisan approaches to how we would make different decisions, and we have talked about character to a certain extent. But I think even the reason that we're in this election is for the wrong reasons. I think the reason that this election, the reason that it was called, was not based on good thinking for Ontario, it was based on partisan interest. And that is the challenge that we're finding. There is too much partisanship in the decision making and too much long-term thinking, and it goes, or too much short-term thinking that's designed to buy votes. I think the opposition forgets its job once it gets to Queen's Park. The job of the loyal opposition is to hold the government accountable. It forgets that. It's too busy trying to prove that it's going to get into government or that it can do the job better to have any long-term thinking, and that's why we see this. We need to return long-term thinking to Queen's Park that puts people and good policy first. And one of the ways to do that is to go back to proportional representation. One of the points I wanted to make is that the people that are doing that are interested in working together. How many voices have you heard up here tonight of people that are willing to work together when they get to Queen's Park, that are willing to work together collaboratively to make good decisions for the people of Ontario in the long run? That's what I encourage you to look for. Look for people that are willing to work together to get the best ideas and put them to work for the people of Ontario. On June 12th, that's what you want to find in Queen's Park.
We have time, I think, for two more questions. I'll recognize the gentleman on my left, and if anybody has one more question, I'll recognize one after him. Your name, sir, and where do you live?
Dave Thompson, St. George. I'd like to thank you all coming to our little party tonight. I'm one of the organizers. I'm going to open a can of worms that's pretty close to what's going on here in St. George, so I'm going to bring up Timco. Okay. Timco Foods managed to open up a rendering plant in St. George area through deceit. And I want to know, I'm going to go this question a little bit different for you, for all of you up there, was when these companies come in, like the Mushroom Coalition out in Burford and the Timco plant here in St. George, and they tell whatever dog and pony show lie they have to get into a community, what would you propose that we do to stop them from profiting from this? Once they're in, right now, we've got the Ministry of Environment, is it, John? Ministry of Environment? Yes. Letting Timco use the neighbors in that area as guinea pigs to see if they can fix a problem that was never supposed to be there in the first place.
What is your
my question? Well, that is my question. Is what do you propose we do to stop these people? How can we, if they use deceit to get in and get operating, you can't get rid of them. What are you going to do to fix that?
And you're asking who?
Hello. See what I got to say.
Can we start on this end of the table this time? No?
There's a lot of companies, similar circumstances. I know in Brantford, there's a tire manufacturing recycling plant. Came in and said the same thing. They wanted to have this operation. And then they got in under the radar and they started expanding all throughout the city, transporting tires and stuff. So the deceit is very important to me. I think that, again, libertarianism is about property rights. And we need to stop using easy employment connections to actually put people first. And these companies that are doing this, they should be held accountable. I mean, we can fine people for walking down the street with open liquor, but we can't fine big corporations that feed into your political parties. And to me, that's wrong, because you guys need to go first.
Thank you.
Thanks. I will be brief on this one. I think we have to put the people first and not the corporations. And I think part of the challenge that we find is that as people, we have a process that we have to go through to get permission, and if it doesn't work or we don't follow the rules, then we get stopped immediately. And part of the problem was that action wasn't taken swift enough to deal with the problem, and that a solution should have been required before they were allowed to continue to operate. If the problem wasn't supposed to exist, then it should have been fixed before it continues to operate, and we need to apply that fairly and evenly to everyone.
Well, thank you for picking up from that position. What I would like to thank Ken about is that bringing in a sense of reality. If we spent all of our time saying no to people, then we would not be moving forward at all. What we have to do is balance this with the proper understanding of the rules and regulations that already exist. And I would say to you that through my office and the work of some of the staff and plus myself, we were able to work with the Minister of the Environment to try to move the company from completely abandoning the community altogether and taking that employment out. And somebody wants to belittle the employment opportunity of new company moving in, that's one thing. But to simply turn around and say, I just don't want them here, so let's figure out a rule to get rid of them, is not going to work. It's not realistic. It's not factual. The law was followed, and if the law was broken, we need to have them to correct it. And we did get them to mitigate it when they didn't want to mitigate it at all. So the reality is that the system worked. The Ministry of the Environment put a stop order on them. And quite frankly, until they got the buffers in, they weren't going to be allowed to operate. So I think you have to do things within reason and make sure that all of the value that is being brought from both sides is appreciated and used. So I think in terms of Timco itself, if there's evidence, instead of just saying it, if there's evidence that they deceive the government, deceive the 3 levels of government, because the municipality was involved in this as well. They have rights as well. So if that company deceived 3 levels of government and somebody caught it, they should not be allowed to operate.
I think I find it a little surprising that a rendering plan was originally approved for a location that's so close to the village. And I frankly wonder what the municipality was thinking at that time. Now, this company faced charges and was closed down temporarily in 2012. They're back operating, as Dave said, with some buffers in place that were required of them. And now we're waiting. MOE air quality testing was completed on April 30th. So just a couple of weeks back, and I guess we're waiting to see what the MOE has to say about how it's operating now. I mean, I really feel for the residents. To have an operation like that so close really affects your quality of life. Having your windows open, having the kids be able to play outside without noxious fumes is obviously a great concern. So I guess what I'd say right now is let's see what comes of the latest round of MOE testing. And if something further needs to be done beyond that, let's be open to whatever actions are necessary.
Thank you. Alex?
So, you know, I certainly understand the concerns around the noxious odors and the concerns about the safety and the enjoyment of people's property in the village. And I would want to know, you know, what's going on here to ensure that, as Dave has said, if there are rules broken, we need to hold people to account because it's just not acceptable for us to have a company come in that's going to greatly decrease property values, right? That's going to cause concern for families in St. George. So, you know, I would certainly encourage you that if you do have information, this needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Well, they're just too big. They have too much power, and these guys can promise you all they want, and there's nothing they're going to be able to do. Me! I'd let them see my knife.
Thank you.
You guys got no humor, and the video is going to show it. They're going to see you guys missing every joke.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
God, my knife! I got an edge!
Last question. Your name and where do you
I thought it was a great joke!
That's enough, John.
My name is Mike, and I'm from London, Ontario. My question is about post-secondary education. I'm a new professor at King's University College at Western, and there's some things that I'm seeing in the platforms that are a bit concerning that I'd like to hear your thoughts on. So the NDP is proposing a tuition freeze, but I did not see anything in the platform about compensating the universities for the lost revenue. The tuition freeze has no end date, but yet university...
Do you have a question?
I do, yes.
Please, not too much preamble.
Okay. University costs are increasing, but yet...
That's not a question. What is your question to the panel?
My question to the panel is, how do you justify your education policies in a way that's not going to hurt universities and families, whether a 30% tuition increase in the part of the PCs or a tuition freeze?
That's a good question. Now, to whom do you want to address it?
I would address it to Alex and to Phil.
To Alex and to Phil. Alex first.
Thank you for your question. As New Democrats, we recognize that in order to have a good quality of life, it's kind of become a prerequisite that students go on to post-secondary education, whether that be university or colleges or trades. But the cost has become a real barrier, not only as they are students and when they are students, but the cost of living is rising. Many students have childcare expenses as well. We don't want that to be a barrier, especially for parents who want to go back to school and provide a better future for their children. So that's why we've said we're going to freeze tuition rates. And we're also going to make the provincial portion of interest zero for OSAP, because when students are graduating and they've got about $30,000 of debt, and they meet their partner who also has $30,000 of debt, and perhaps as a PhD student you are paying these debts as a new professor, then we know that it's almost impossible to think about how could you ever afford to buy a home? How could you ever afford to have children and pay for childcare and get married if you have $60,000 of combined debt hanging over you? And that's the priority of New Democrats, making sure that education is available and affordable to many more people than it currently is. Thank you.
Thank you. I think your question was also addressed to...
Well, that was basically my question as how do you...
I heard your question. To whom did you had
Just Phil as well.
Phil, please. Would you answer the question?
Surely.
What that might mean.
That's fine. Thank you.
I hear a lot of stories around town and in the county of people that, it's heartbreaking really. You have people graduating from undergrad programs with debt of $30,000, $35,000 and not finding jobs. And I hear it from parents, I hear it from grandparents, you know, that the graduates are not finding jobs, they're living at home, they're still in their room, they're in the rec room, they don't know what they're going to do, they can't begin to pay back the debt they have. I think we have to do a better job of matching people going into programs with where the opportunities are going to be in the workforce, in the marketplace. So locally, a big concern for me, we've had a tremendous success with Wilfrid Laurier, with the campus in Brantford. I want to see us have similar success with college and training programs, because Mohawk College has all but left Brantford. We once had a thriving campus on Elgin Street. It's gone. I want to see more local opportunities for training and apprenticeship and college here, because frankly, I think for those graduates, that's where more of the jobs are.
Thank you. I'm going to exercise my...
Don't do that.
...my hammer tonight. We've used up the time of the question period.
I got a one-liner.
And I'm going to cut the debate at this
Not
point.
fair. Cheap shot.
We now come to that portion of the meeting where each of the candidates...
God, I had a good one-liner there. What a shit.
If you want to stay in the hall, be quiet.
What? Who's going to move me? Me. Want a bet? You and what badge? You can't touch me. Wake up. You got a badge.
That's enough, John. Please.
Just warning you, he's got to have a badge to touch me and he's unaware. Then I'll charge him with assault. So go away, I'll be good.
Thank you.
Am I right? Hey, lawyers out there?
Be quiet.
All right. I'm invulnerable. My mouth is controlled at my volition.
The closing statements of the candidates will be for 2 minutes each. We will go in the reverse order of that in which they started, and that brings us to Phil Gillies. You're on.
Well, thank you again to the organizers, for the Residents Association, for the invitation. Thank you all for a very interesting evening. I think it's particularly interesting for us because this is the first debate of this campaign. I think we have 4 or 5 coming up, but having the opportunity of meeting with you first in St. George has been great and very stimulating. I just want to say what I'm finding as I go and talk to people throughout the riding, as I go to doors, I talk to people in the coffee shops, and I'm running into a lot of despondency, a lot of people throwing their hands up. They feel that government has not been responsive to their needs. They read about multi-billion-dollar scandals and they despair of how their representatives are spending their money. They worry about the future. And they're worried about the ever-increasing cost that they face as a household or a small business. Hydro rates keep going up and up. Taxes keep going up and up. And every proposal they see come forward, particularly in recent budgets from the Liberal Party, is reaching further and further into their pockets. And what I hear is, does it have to be this way, or can we change? And that is when I see their faces light up, is when I tell people, it doesn't have to be this way. We can change. We can run a leaner, more efficient government that is more respectful of you and your money. And that is what I'm promising if I should be elected on June the 12th. I will only have one set of bosses if I win this election, and that's all of you. I look forward to that opportunity, and thank you again very, very much for your stimulating questions and comments tonight.
Thank you, Phil. The next speaker is Alex Felski.
Thank you. Phil's hit the nail on the head. We know that on June 12th, people will be making a choice, and overwhelmingly at the doorsteps, people are saying they're ready for change. They're ready for change that's going to focus on their priorities, to make life affordable, to create good jobs, and to make sure we have access to health care. Now, when we make this choice, please keep me in mind. I want to go to Queen's Park to work hard for you. And that's why I'm outdoor knocking every day, all day. And I'm so grateful to the organizers for providing chairs for us, because my feet are quite sore, so thank you for that. I'm really serious about working hard to advocate on your behalf, to make sure that we have a better future and that we can look to a government who's going to respect our tax dollars. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. The next speaker is Rob First.
I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank the organizers for running the event. Getting out and vote, we talked a little bit tonight about the importance of voting. Regardless of being flawed system or who you support, you need to get out and vote. One thing I need to mention is Elections Ontario has a special ballot. They'll come to the seniors who are disabled, and that's very important. I haven't heard any of the other candidates promote this because it is something that's vitally important in our community. The disabled, the seniors can get out and vote. I think that mistakes of big government cannot be fixed by yet more government. So on June 12th, I ask for your support and trust in your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. The next speaker is Ken Burns.
Well, thanks very much. We've certainly had some good conversations tonight, and there's lots to consider in this election for us to focus on good policy and long-term thinking in future governments that puts people first. One thing that we haven't talked about very much tonight, and we sort of did in the opening question, but is protecting our farmland and source water. And we really need to do that to protect our farmland and support our farm industry here in Ontario and in Brant County. The aggregate extraction is a huge issue locally that needs to have more discussion and more focus in our community. We just saw another 225 acres of prime farmland, Class 1 and Class 2 farmland get rezoned for aggregate extraction in our community. Provincially right now, the province prioritizes gravel over food and water, and to me that's just insanity. We need food and water to live. We need to be able to protect our own food security. There are other sources of aggregate than virgin gravel, particularly where it comes from Class 1 and 2 farmland. Many people don't know we only have about 0.5% of Ontario's area is prime farmland, and we've already developed 20% of it. We've already developed 20% of the prime farmland in Ontario. We need to protect, and the Green Party is committed to protecting Class 1 farmland from development, and that's a beginning. We need to do more. I'm already getting my sign. I want to encourage Brantford and Brant and Six Nations to work together so that we focus on building up and not spreading out, that we do protect our development. Beyond that, I really encourage us to continue to work together collaboratively as communities and as future representatives at Queen's Park. The future of returning good policy to decision-making is based on working together and long-term sustainable thinking. Thank you, and vote on June 12th.
Okay, so you remember how the professors kept their jobs in Argentina by insisting on being paid with bonds that could use for hydro taxes, medical, and licenses. Well, you remember earlier I mentioned how the definition of insanity was doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? And the definition of stupidity was not wanting to know any new ideas? Well, I said only asking for 3 out of 6 was the definition of stupidity, and the professor stands up and says, I want to hear 2. So, guess what? I'm here, and you may think I've been dumping on Dave because all those suicided single mothers, because they didn't set up a lead system. Then, of course, nobody else would have either. Nobody else, no other elected politician has ever bothered to listen. The voters look at me and they laugh, never get elected, doesn't have a fleet of cars to transport a bunch of brain-dead voters to the polls, never gonna win, John Turmel, politics ain't serious. Well, the blood ain't on Dave Levac's hands for all those dead poor people. It's on the hands of the voters who put him there. So you go home and sleep at night, and you try, and remember, you're the guys put him there, so do nothing Dave did nothing for 11 years while you guys could have had a Let's Time Bank working in your system with John the engineer. And I'm pissed off at your stupidity. On tape.
The last speaker is Dave Levac.
Thanks very much, Roy. You've done a great job. I appreciate that very much, and I also appreciate the people that have come out tonight. And for those that have stuck it out, John Werstein, Dave Thompson, I'm going to work with you guys to get air conditioning for the center. We'll do what we can to help you up there. Listen, I've dedicated my life to this community. I've dedicated all of my leadership and the capacity that I have in order to bring us together, to try to work together, to play together, to live together. It's unfortunate that we can't have a dialogue without insult, a dialogue without...
Dead people, Dave! Fuck your insult! Dead people! Who's talking insult? Yeah, you gonna move me out, lady?
Please.
Hey, he wants to bring me up? I get a one-liner.
We invited you here
He
tonight.
talked about me.
Be quiet.
He talked about me. Go away without a badge. He talked about
You
me.
won't be invited again.
I don't care. I'll come and you'll need a badge. Everybody needs a badge if they want to keep me out. You know that. I was arrested 4 times last election, and this sumbitch tricked me into getting arrested once.
And I...
Go ahead, Dave.
I
I'm
will
finished.
offer my respect, as I always have, to anybody that wants to share their opinion. I will still be respectful regardless, but the reality is...
I got no respect for you, Dave. There's a difference.
So the reality is that I've dedicated my life to try to help this community to be the best it can. I intend to continue to do that. I want us to all look at all of the policies, digest them, make sure that you understand what they are actually saying, and then you'll find that some of those policies are going to hurt our community. I told Walton then, I told Kathleen Wynn, and I'm telling anybody. I've worked with Jane Stewart, I've worked with Lloyd St. Amand, I've worked with Phil McColeman, I've worked with Mayor Eddy, I've worked with the councillors.
Got nothing done.
And quite frankly, the capacity that we have when we work together, there's no one in this room that's smarter than all of us together.
I am.
Therefore, you now know how to vote.
One-liners.
Quite frankly, the ability for us all to work together is what I've sought all my life. And I was taught by my parents a long time ago that you get success when you work with everybody together.
Well, you got none yet, Dave. They like that. They like that.
John, will you be quiet, please?
Okay.
Oh, no. No, the normal one.
No, it's okay, lady. I know you had fun.
Enough. That brings us to the end of our formal meeting tonight. I'd like to thank the candidates, all of them, for their consideration, for their attention, for answering the questions that were asked in a reasonable manner, and I hope that whoever it is gets elected enjoys having come here first. I am told that there is a meeting here tomorrow night put on by the county to explain to people the ramifications of the various boundary disputes. Mayor Eddy is here tonight, and if anybody would like to speak to him about that meeting, I'm sure he'd be glad to hear from you. Tomorrow night, same time, same place.
Not by the county. Not being held by the county, being held by us. The same people put this one on.
I stand corrected.
Sorry, I got a lot of dead friends.
You're invited, as I said before, you are invited downstairs. There are cookies and cakes and the school demonstration. I thank you for coming. Good night.